Welcome back to the Rack Pack. If you're just joining us for the first time, the Rack Pack is a brand new podcast with 5 modular synth nerds, and we discuss everything related to synthesizers. We talk gear, we even talk music, we talk people. Today we are obviously going to cover the big synthesizer event of the year that just took place, Superbooth. We did our first episode was a pre-Superbooth preview, and now that the event has come and passed, we have tons of new things to talk about. We're just going to briefly introduce ourselves. Just everyone go around the table here and everyone say what their name is and who they are. I am Blue Nautilus, and also joining us today
I'm Stu J over here. I've got myself, Stu J.
I have myself over here, Moonbase Alpha.
Wonderful. Yeah, LCDG over here. Good stuff.
Hi, everybody. I'm SynthDad.
And SynthDad, you actually went to Berlin and you attended this event. And before we get into like all of the new gear, which we're all going to want to discuss, what was it like being there, and how would you compare this year to other years that you've been?
Superbooth is quite a unique experience if you've never been to it and you think of it just like a trade show like NAMM. You couldn't be further from the truth. So Superbooth is the closest thing to an outdoor music festival crossed with a trade show, crossed with just a good time hanging out with your friends in the sunshine in the woods, because that's really what it is. It's held in Berlin every year in May, so the weather is nice and mild. It's in this lovely outdoor wooden area. It's like an activity center for schools and former East Berlin, and there's an indoor arena which is definitely part of the exhibition. The real magic of it is it's held in the woods, so there's tents and bungalows which would normally be used for camping or school events, if you will, that are repurposed into kind of showrooms for modular gear. And so it's very casual, very laid back. People are chilling. There's concerts from great performers. There's talks from industry notables, and you can walk right up to your favorite manufacturer, talk to them, ask them questions, give them suggestions, and it really is just a great way to connect in with the manufacturers. I think this year was one of the biggest years they've had. I was talking to Herr Schneider, who runs it. If you're familiar with Schneider's Leden in Germany, you'll know who I'm talking about. And he was saying that they actually had to cap it at 300 exhibitors, and they had to turn people away who were too late because they wanted to keep the size and the vibe just right without it getting too big. And it's really emphasized to me that despite all that's going on in the world, there's a lot of health in the modular market right now. Everyone is making stuff. There's a lot of new ideas, people trying to join in Superbooth. The way I look at it in terms of the attendees, it was pretty busy on the Thursday, the first day, because that was actually a random bank holiday, a public holiday in Germany. So the crowds were actually larger on the Thursday, with a lot more kids actually in attendance, which made for a lovely family vibe. So it was very relaxed and chill. The other way I kind of measured how successful it was every Saturday we have a YouTuber meetup. It was organized by Bo Beats, and I've gone every year. And the first year we did it, which was about 3 or 4 years ago, there might have been about 30, 40 people at it. This year, there was 150 people showed up for the YouTuber meetup. It was a huge crowd. I couldn't believe it. So a really good vibe, great kind of fun in the festival. There was a lot of great performance, great talks. So I think, like, yet again, showing there's a lot of health and interest in the modular world right now.
Do you think it was possibly too crowded? I heard from some attendees that they had difficulty actually getting up to the booths sometimes because there were so many people around.
That can definitely happen. I have learned from experience that if there's stuff you wanted to see, and we'll get to that when we start talking about the gear that was there, if the stuff that you want to see, you've got to make a plan and get there early. If you just rock up at lunchtime, it's already pretty crowded. So I got there maybe about 9:30, 10 and got in a bit early and got to see things before the big crowds came. Because
how do you even Sorry, how do you even make a plan when the show's that big and there's that much to see?
People laugh. I show them my list. I make a list ahead of time. I go through the attendees.
Had a feeling.
I had a feeling, yeah. I make a list, and I have it with me on my phone, and I've shown it to a few others, and they're always laughing. Goes up. He always has his list, and over the course of the 3 or 4 days, I work my way down that list, ticking people off as I go through them, and by the end of the week, I'm like, look, I did the whole blooming list.
Wait, here's a question. Do you have a special check mark system for your list? So they're not just crossed. You like circle some, dash others.
No, I'm pretty basic.
Is that a thing?
It's just so my dad makes lists, and he has like such a specific way he checks them off if they go to the next day, if it's something needs to be continued. So I was imagining the same sort of just modulus rocking down a yellow notepad.
Because he's SynthDad.
You have to. That's the tie-in. What do you mean?
It's funny.
No, I couldn't do that.
Last time, Mark, we talked a little bit about how I've gone 2 years in a row, but it was only the last day each time, and so I had to do quite a bit in a short period of time. You said you went through your whole Bloomin' list, and I'm thinking about this bit from the old Blue Man Group. I don't know if everybody here ever saw Blue Man Group, but they did a thing where the 3 blue men are up on stage, each with a placard, and each placard says something different, and they're flipping through them quickly, and they're only going to be doing it for about a minute. And if your mind can even focus on one, if you can, either it'll have too much text to understand, or you'll be able to understand it and it'll say you're really missing out on a good one to your left, or it'll say you're reading the wrong one, or and it kind of reminded me of my experience at Superbooth. If you're not there the whole time and you don't have a Bloomin' list, you're not going to see it all, and you just have to accept that you got to see what you got to see.
It's just highly concentrated FOMO.
And exactly.
Well, no matter, it's true, because no matter how well I think I've done, somebody will always say to me, "Oh, did you see blah 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 such and such?" I'm like, "No, where the hell was that? I missed that one."
Yeah,
and
that blew my mind.
There's this whole side of the show, like it always happens, and then I'll of course say to them, "But of course I was really impressed by such and such," and they'll be like, "Oh, I didn't even know they were here this year." So like it really does happen. It happens to everybody. What I do is I'll reach out to people ahead of time that I've had relations with doing videos, shall we say, or they'll reach out to me, and we'll arrange to meet up. So I'll already know they're there, and I'll know what they have, and I'll have had a plan to go see them. But it's easy to get overwhelmed by it, yeah.
There's something to be said for just staying home and watching the Sonic State videos on YouTube. I mean, you really get to see
those
everything.
Guys are insane. They are really, really professional at doing that. They've really got that thing nailed down to a fine art, and I can tell you they pay for it. At the end of the day, they're knackered. Well,
SynthDad, you were our man on the street. You were representing the Rack Pack. We sent you there specifically to
as
gather
our
information.
ambassador.
Exactly, as our ambassador. But and I know you're going to have a lot to say, so I actually wanted to give an opportunity for the people who weren't there first to say, like, what is one thing that you saw coming out of the show that you were excited about from a distance?
I'll jump in. There were quite a few things. I would say the Neuzeit instruments drop and clank uranograph are probably two of the most interesting things. And actually, Intellijel Jellymix.
All the Intellijel stuff caught me off guard. So I couldn't even say I was looking forward to that. But still, the Vino Orbit, I kind of laughed at. I just found out they changed the name from Vino Looper to Vino Orbit a little bit before demoing it before London Synth Expo. So literally just had the name kind of sticky padded over the module. But yeah, there's so much hardware. Even literally there was a final update from Superbooth today from Clatter's Machines. So the hardware news is still coming out. So if you weren't physically there to interact with stuff, you're still getting somewhat drip-fed hardware news.
For me, it's Make Noise Polymaths and 8-channel maths. I mean, come on, you could do my dishes. It's just one of the most, if not the most iconic module in Eurorack history. Getting an upgrade, I think, is a really big deal.
I think you're right. Let's maybe talk. Let's take that one on first, because I think that is a big deal. Although I personally have never owned a Maths, and I'm kind of proud of the fact it's just somehow.
I'm the same. It's like, do you even modular if you don't have Maths?
Yeah.
That was one of the booths I couldn't get up to because it was so busy. I couldn't physically get to the booth to actually take a look at the maths to end all maths. Yeah.
That's pretty wild. Yeah, it's the NUS, right? The new Universal Synthesizer System. Is that
Yeah.
their
Of
new
one
approach?
signal comes many. Seems like a massive mult type exercise, which I'm sure grossly oversimplifies or doesn't oversimplify. I think some of the most wondrous results can come out of the most simple things. So who knows where this is going to go? I'm all in on NUS. I'm going to get polymaths whenever that's released. Do we know when that's going to be released?
I don't know, but Stu, say more about that. Like, what do you think you can do with a polymath that you can't do with a math? I mean, besides just having
The
more
honest
channels.
answer is I have no idea. I don't know. But I have, when I started my modular journey, I bought a maths as one of my first modules and I sold it. It was the wrong decision for me at the time because I did not know what I was doing. I didn't know the difference between an envelope and an LFO. I knew nothing. And so it was just confounding and I got rid of it. And I learned on more basic Doppler modules. Then once I learned the language, I reacquired maths and I view it as a great gift. I think it was Mylar Melodies once said, if something, I paraphrase, but when I sit down in a new system, a system that I don't know, if I see a maths, I feel centered, I feel at home, and I know what I can do. And that's kind of what maths has done for me. And over the past year, my journey has leaned towards Make Noise. I've acquired almost, but not all of the current offerings. And there's just so many videos, so much instruction, so much learning about them that I've just found it as a great way to improve my skills. And so the answer is, I don't know what NUS is going to bring to the table. It's less about what I think concretely that I can do with it and more of my putting trust in Make Noise at this point, that if it's of interest to them, I will trust their instinct. And I'm along for this ride as an early adopter. And as these podcasts go on, I will report back on my explorations and maybe even record some stuff.
I hope so. I was going to ask you about if you've had any time to spend with Jumbler yet or not.
Not yet. Not yet.
I'm
We
excited.
could do a whole episode about making time for this stuff, right?
It's an
It's
interesting.
a whole another subject entirely.
Their approach is interesting, right? Because it's quasi polyphony, or it's they're taking these 8 signals, but it's not like it's a tip top approach where you're actually
Right.
using new cables with the multiple signals per voice, etc. Right? So it's
It's not a new technology.
Yeah, but it's really interesting approach because they're almost making a halfway ground where you have the ability to do polyphony, but you don't have to maybe invest in a completely new technology and cable type, etc.
I think DivKid needs a big shout out here with his the success of Oct, and I suspect Make Noise was paying attention to the success of Oct, and just kind of taking that and expanding on it and beefing it up and beefing it out. Beefing it out? That's not a phrase. It is now.
Yeah, you can beef things out totally.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I
I
just
can
molted the
beef
word
out
I've
beef.
seen it in print.
Don't think that's
Probably on the internet somewhere.
But it's hard not to see Oct's influence on the entire system.
I mean, one of the things we want to do is kind of try to draw some trends from all the different stuff that we saw. And I think beefing out or adding multiple channels to things is something I saw a lot of. It seems like there were a lot of modules that had 4 to 8 copies of things. Like there's like the Chaos resonator or delay. And those things come obviously at the cost of a lot of space. But it seemed like there was less concern for keeping things small. Like there's a point in Eurorack history where it seemed like everybody wanted tiny versions of things, like the little Pico or 2HP stuff. And now there's all these huge, like there was also that wave folder from WMD, which has 45 different channels.
folders, Scorpion. Yeah, we can talk about some of that stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's a good observation. If you look at something like Samarkanda, which was the big 4-channel delay from Chaos Devices, which I have right here beside me, it's 4 independent channels of delay. But you could have said, well, why didn't they release 4 delay, just one delay module, and you buy 4 of them? But because they've done it that way, it's kind of promoting an awful lot of playfulness around how you could use it and cross patch it and self patch it. And the Aura Dia, which was their resonator, which I played around with as well, again, 4 channels of resonators that kind of are tuned in a certain way. And the first thing I thought of when I was chatting away with them about this is, I'm going to pair this with Samarkand. I'm going to put these as inline effects in the delay lines. And straight away now, if that had been a smaller module and the manufacturer had made choices for you and kind of constrained it, you wouldn't be able to do that. I wouldn't have been able to, say, mix and match different effects into a delay line setup or something like that. So I think it's a great approach.
And no one would go out and buy 4 of them.
And nobody would buy 4 of them, no.
Not even me.
I was going to say no one
Yeah,
even pays off.
Well,
But after all this, and you need a new case, and you need a new case.
so that's one thing. And I did see that with quite a few other modules. Size wasn't not an issue. Size was not a concern. I can share a few of my observations as our man in Berlin, shall we say. The first thing that really jumped out at me, if we're going to talk themes, because it'll touch on a few things, is manufacturers are kind of branching out. And you see that with, for example, MIDI controllers from Neuzeit, the Drop. You see it from Frap Tools with their amazing polyphonic keyboard, even though it's a prototype. You see it in pedals with Polyand and a few others. You see Intellijel making the Jellymix, their mixer. I mean, everybody seems to be going slightly to the left or to the right, adjacent spaces, right? And taking their expertise in like DSP processing or in circuit design or whatever, or panel design, taking that and branching out. And like the one that really you just couldn't get away from was the new Frap Tools, the Magnolia. It was like first thing on my list. You talked about my list. There's a reason I made a list.
Oh, yeah.
I knew I wanted to get to that place first and see it. And I was so happy I did, because that was easily one of the most popular things at the show. It's funny, there's always something that word gets around and everybody goes to see it. It just always happens. And it often is not the thing you would expect. It's like Moog had a brand new monosynth there, but everybody wanted to go see the Frap Tools one because it was just so unexpected. And a polysynth, releasing a new polysynth in this day and age, there's a lot of competition at that price point. That's a big space to be playing in. It's a pricey space. People are very demanding. But then again, Frap Tools builds very high-end modules, and they've got a ton of expertise in the company. Like, again, it reminds me of when Udo brought the prototype Super 6 about 3-ish years ago, maybe a little longer. It wasn't finished. It was still plenty to be worked out on it, but it sounded amazing, and it just blew everybody away. And I think it's the same thing with the Frap Tools. There's quite a few good demos out there online from people who have actual keyboard skills, as against yours truly, who would just be hunting and pecking with one finger on the keyboard. In terms of Eddie, you had a question, Stu.
Well, I was actually gonna go back to something you said earlier about the crowds. That seems like a huge, huge difference in crowds, going from 30 to 40, because I was there the past couple of years for the meet and greet. So we've talked a little bit about the market and tariffs, and we've talked a bit about the stress and strain that's being put on manufacturers and on individuals. What does it tell us that Superbooth attendance is going up and not down, and so drastically? What's your sense of things? What was the vibe like over there? Are people seeing things and saying, "Oh, I wish I could buy this"? Are they going to buy this stuff?
I talked to a lot of it was the question on everybody's lips. It was the elephant in the room, and everyone was talking about it after they talked about the modules and the this and the that. The very next question was, and how are you dealing with tariffs, or how are you handling this? Now, you've got to remember, Superbooth is a very international audience. A lot of these manufacturers are based in Europe or based outside of the US. So it does... it is a global audience, and it reminds you that tariffs don't necessarily impact everybody equally, but they certainly will impact everybody somehow. And you see that in the way a lot of the manufacturers are approaching, like, are we doing a limited run of this? How many of these can we realistically make? That kind of thing. So I do think it's on everybody's minds, but the honest answer I was getting from everybody I spoke to about it was they just don't know. The uncertainty is what's killing everybody. And I can't think of any industry right now that isn't experiencing the same degree of uncertainty, whether you're in the modular business or you make oil rigs or whatever. It's the same all around the world right now.
Could it be that the event itself is just getting popular more than the hobby is itself? I mean, how long has Superbooth been going on now?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's about 6 or 7 years, but it started out as a sub part of a bigger trade fair in Frankfurt, and then eventually grew and grew and grew, and obviously it stopped over the COVID period. But yeah, it's been going on for a few years. That's a good question. One thing's for sure though, like, there is a great global audience out there for modular. Like, there are people coming from China. There's obviously people from all over Europe, from South America, from Canada. There are a few people from Australia. Like, there is a global audience out there, and there is a global market for this. And that's beautiful to see. You know, there's no one dominant kind of geography that owns this space.
Let's go back to Intellijel for a moment. Moonbase Alpha brought this up, and I wanted to talk about their stuff because this is one of the sort of collections of modules that caught my eye the most. For some reason, everything they've been doing lately has just totally been on my mind. I really loved the sea legs and the new reverb that looks like it's out of the same sort of vein, swells. And
Multi-grain.
Multi-grain, that's right. And there's you mentioned the mixer, Jellymix, and also they had a new case, their successful case, coming out with a new revision. So they seem like they're on fire lately.
It's not just that, but there were two kind of sneaky modules hidden between those big announcements. The one I think is going to be really cool is that new filter they have. It's kind of like a stereo DJ style filter, but it's got some EQ capabilities. I need to go back and check out the screenshot. Yeah, scoops. So they've got scoops, and it looks like they've got a little 2 HP mic, which of course would pair perfectly, perhaps with multi-grain or you know, you can see they're creating this stereo effects ecosystem, and I love the UX, and obviously the sounds are fantastic.
The same's on, and I wonder do they share the same circuitry with Jellymix, because Jellymix, it's beautiful, looks beautiful, like it's metal, like a really high quality, and it's not like cheap plastic or anything, but it doesn't use faders, it uses knobs. But like each channel, it's a 4-channel mixer, each channel stereo, 1/4-inch inputs on the back of it. Each of them has 2 aux sounds, there's tilt EQ per channel, but there's also a DJ style mixer on the end of it. So like, you know, it's like they're taking the best of all their other modules and mixing it all in. So it's interesting that they kind of went for a desktop mixer as against yet another in-rack mixer. I had no idea what the price on the Jellymix would be, but you know, it's certainly like anything from Intellijel. It looks fabulous. No doubt it'll sound pristine as well.
I think they said $800, something like that.
And I think it's
a magic
channels.
number for everything these days.
Yeah, that's where I think the Intellijel case is going to come out around too. But yeah, I think it's 5 channels for Jellymix, and the thing that stands out for me,
5, yeah.
no, all good. There's a trillion channels and everything to remember. But when I'm looking at my L6 and then I look at the Jellymix, you can kind of see how one feels more performative. The Jellymix just feels like it's more of a hands-on sort of mixing instrument versus perhaps the L6, where you're using it with a bunch of different types of instruments. You have your sound pads, you have your SD recording, so they're both different, useful in different situations.
We talked about cases, and we talked about Intellijel with their updated version of the case. It now has 8 1/4-inch outputs on the back. Morph Modular really seem to be showing a much more solid kind of set of products this year. Their cases now come at 84 HP and 104 HP. It also has 8 1/4-inch outputs, but they've now developed a series of expander modules to go around it. So, for example, they're building a DI module that'll build right into the case, and you can mix and match whether you have XLR outputs or DI outputs right in your case. So talking about performance, you know, if you're going into clubs, you want to have a DI, and it can be right in your case. And similarly, Bafaco, obviously their case came out a few years ago, but now they've added more 1U modules to go with it, like little guitar pedal power modules and things like that. So I think existing modular manufacturers are now beginning to say, hey, you know, cases represent something that we can innovate around as well, be it Intellijel or Morph, and I think Morphs are really, really great for like portable performance stuff. and Intellijel as well. I think the Bafako stuff sits really well in terms of all the other modules they've developed around that as well. And so they're continuing. I think they're going to do more in the 1U line to interface with the case. But the nice thing is they're all compatible with each other. Like the kind of, shall we say, the Intellijel standard for cases seems to work across all of them, which is nice to see.
Yeah, who would get a Pulp Logic 1U? That'd be so wild. It's such a crazy thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, Acidity is joking because I just got a couple of these Halliburton cases that came with a Pulp Logic row, and it does feel like having a Betamax system that it's difficult to use, and I'm jealous of all those 1U Bafako and Intellijel modules that you were just mentioning, which is why I've actually had. That case looks so interesting to me, even though I have no use for a case right now.
So you go around telling superior quality.
Exactly. Though. You go around telling everybody yours looks and sounds better, even though you only have like 3 modules to go. Anyway, we're joking. A couple of other things that grab my eye. I mean, I touched on some of this in my own video that I posted on my channel with my best of Superbooth, but the Neuzeit DROP MIDI controller is definitely a very interesting take on a performance controller. And I really stress the word performance controller here because it's built for literally bills and drops. So if you're that type of performer who is doing more housey techno or beat driven music, this is the thing you want. And Thomas is a really smart guy. His modules are always super high quality. He's put a ton of thought into this, and the build quality is outstanding. It's like solid metal enclosure. It's built to go to the clubs. It's built to be abused. So I'm really looking forward to getting one and trying it out. Similarly, the new Oxy 1 Mark II, or the Oxy 2, let's call it the Oxy 1 Mark II. We touched on it in our last episode. Now it's out. I think the first deliveries are coming this week for people. The firmware is still being updated, so that's a thing. But they had them there at the booth, and it was as popular as you could imagine. And it's funny, whenever I go around watching the live performances at Superbooth, I always see an Oxy 1 on about at least half, if not more, of the performer tables. Like it is such a popular one.
One of the benefits is that they are always updating the firmware. Right? You said they're updating the firmware. That's never going to stop. And I think that's one of the best things about it.
And also they did a firmware update for the Mark I to add a whole load of new features as well. So there's definitely, the Mark I owners should not feel abandoned. And I'm certainly not going to sell my Mark I unit. It's a fantastic sequencer, and there'll always be a place for it. And so for me, I think that's their strength, is that they really are responding to the community and adding things. Right now, they're just in a main march to get the Oxy 1 Mark II firmware solid, and a few of the new things they've been adding in there too. Let's see what else. A couple of other modules.
Did you just one question? Did you, while you were there at Superbooth, did you have a chance to get your Eurorack read?
So remember how we talked about, like, people will think they've seen all of Superbooth and then somebody will say something? That's a great example of, I spent 3.5 days at Superbooth, like really going at it hard every day, and I never got to see the Uranograph. So I have to say, sorry, I missed it.
Did you get to see the Velectronic booth? I know they're coming out with a new VCA and
a new output mixer. Yep.
Yeah.
Not a ton of info on those, by the way. There's a little bit, but nothing like. There's no price info, but those are both two bigger modules. I think that the VCA is around 22 HP, and the mixer's got to be at least 18.
Yeah, they make high quality stuff.
I missed that completely. I played around with the 1010, the bento box, to go with the black box, the evolution of the black box. It's a bit bigger, so if the black box is great because you just throw it in your backpack and not even think about it and have all your samples queued up. This one is a little bigger. It's more like meant to be a self-contained groove box, and it's quite interesting what they've done. They've kind of taken a lot of the good ideas out of the black box and evolved it slightly, added more controls to it. I could see that being a fun one to like take on a plane or take on a train somewhere and just jam away on. But I mean, the same with the Ableton Move, right? You can do the same thing with the Move. So there's a lot of those type of... It's interesting as battery and microcontroller technology has improved. We're seeing so many more battery powered or screen driven things now, because the technology allows anyone to really build that at a fairly affordable price point, which, you know, even 3 or 4 years ago you wouldn't have seen, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was going to say quickly about the Oxy One, or the Oxy and why it's so popular. It has to be because it's small form factor, battery powered, and it's just so powerful. Like those three things together equal a great sequencer.
It's just the right size to bring with you to a performance, right? It's like you can totally slip it in a backpack, but it's not too small that your fingers are going to have difficulty finding the button.
Yeah, that is the nice thing about it for sure. A couple of other things. Shackmat had a couple of new modules that I've already got a few. Shackmat I think they're doing a much nicer job now of like evolving their modules and working with people to kind of like get them out in front of the community. So their classic battering ram, the Archer's rig were the mainstays of people who made good techno. New versions of those and evolved versions of those are coming. Along those lines, Ownforce, who are well known for their plugins, their distortion plugins, had a module last year or 2 years ago, which was a distortion module, Homicide. I have it here beside me. They just came out with a new kick module, but it's not just a kick module. It's like a kick ecosystem, which makes me sound very clever and fancy, because it's both the sidechain before the kick in one module, the kick module itself, and then the kick rumble generator module as a multi-tap delay that comes afterwards. So you can just craft the kicks to your heart content here. So that is going to be, and I tell you, when they cranked that thing up, it was shaking the whole hall it was in. There was some sub bass coming off that.
Do you want to hear all the dorky stats? I've got them here in front of me.
Hit us with the dorky stats.
All right, 3 modules. It is the stereo kick ecosystem. The BOEM is 18 HP, retails for $400 US, and it's a stereo kick synthesis module with, I believe, 9 flavors of virtual drum circuitry. Then there's 2 expanders. The Groove, which is 10 HP, about 150 USD. That brings a second kick voice to the main module, letting you layer rhythms, timbral variation, all that good stuff. And then the third one is the Performer, which has the stereo mixing, the ducking, DJ style filtering. So yeah, there's some serious power between those 3 modules. It takes the rabbit elephant kick to the next.
They kind of sat down and said, if you want to kick, what's everything you want a kick to do? And they said, let's build all of that. So I'm really looking forward to playing with that. That's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, what's more, the rabbit elephant kick or all 3 of the BOEM modules? Who knows?
Unobtainium, though, is the problem. Let's talk about that Scorpion wavefolder from WMD, because come on, when WMD puts out a module, you've got to pay attention. And it was really impressive, and William has put a lot of heart and soul and thought and blood, sweat and tears into building this. I know he's been working on it for years to get it to this point. It's going to be a very limited run. If you want to buy this module, do not sleep on buying it. And I hate saying, like, hit that buy button, because this one will be a very short-lived run. It's priced at, I think, just not $1,000.
It's $1,000 before tax and tariffs.
US. I mean, that's a pricey module. Now, there's no 2 ways you look at it, right? But it is, like everything he does, incredibly high quality, incredibly clever, and has a ton of stuff built in under the hood in terms of built-in modulators and built-in wavefolding effects. But first of all, it's not a wavefolder. I know everyone thinks it's a wave folder.
Wait, what?
It's not a wave folder. It's a wave reanimator. So let's get geeky for a second.
Oh, come on.
Let's get geeky. Let's
reanimate.
So a wave folder takes your input source and applies a transformation to it and then re-outputs it. This does not take the input source to the output. What it does is it redraws a new waveform based on the input source waveform, crossing a set of thresholds that you set in the parameters and can modulate. So first of all, that means there's no danger of clipping, because what you're doing is you're building a whole new waveform using these 8 wave folders to recreate a new waveform from a mapping of the input wave. So
is it anything like panharmonium, like resynthesizing?
I'm not too familiar with the panharmonium. Does it generate a whole new wave based on the input?
Yeah, and you can change the number of elements
It's based on the harmonics of the input.
That's changing
right?
the harmonics, though. Yeah, it's not changing the shape of the
this
waves.
is
Right?
Right,
This
right.
is
But
what-
it's
yeah.
but it's recreating the input with the wave shapes that you
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
can do square, saw, or whatever.
But it to me, it just was like, the easy route would have been to just build a 8-way wave folder. But no, he went and made it the incredibly powerful, complex route. So whether we were piping drums through it or just a triangle wave, it just sounded bloody amazing. I mean, there's no two
So
ways
are
about
you
it.
that does that mean you're getting one?
If one was to find its way to me, I wouldn't say no. I will put you.
Oh, but you're not going to like put your own money on it.
I don't. I don't know if I could justify that personally because there's enough other things I'd have my eye on.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little more because how many people actually can? I mean, I know we all know this is an expensive hobby, right? Clearly, Eurorack is not cheap stuff. But is this getting to a point where it's just beyond the realm of actually sustainable as a product? I mean, this thing does a very specific effect on one wave. It can't make any sound on its own, right? You need to have this thing in combination with a lot of other devices, obviously, and it costs $1,000 on its own. I don't know. I'm pretty skeptical.
Well, I think we have one of the beautiful things about this hobby of ours, for most of us, it's a hobby, is that it's modular. It's modular. So if people don't want to get $1,000 wave reanimator, they can go and get a really wonderful, lovely dope for wave folder, get a simple VCO, some decent filters, and have a lot of fun. But for those of us who are really down the rabbit hole, or those of us who are fortunate enough to have the expendable income to go ahead and experiment with a $999 wave reanimator, that's available too. And I think that's kind of what's really fantastic about this hobby. And makers like Make Noise, Intellijel, Instro, they have very expensive modules and they have more reasonably priced modules. And there's so much you can do with reasonably priced modules. So I love that we have all these flavors. And hey, if I get an unexpected tax refund one year and I want to get that reanimator, I like that I might be able to.
I mean, it's great to, people are doing it because there's demand, So
Is
people
that
are
true?
Well, I mean, I don't think.
I guess we'll find out. But
that Scorpion run is going to sell out, like
Excuse me.
no doubt. You know what I mean? Like
It's like their rabbit. No, what's it? Rabbit elephant. The natural gate. Like that thing.
Natural gate.
Yeah, that thing was gone the moment it went on sale, and it was very, very expensive. I can't remember the exact price point, but I do recall it being the kind of price point where you go, "Ooh, I might have to have a think about that."
yeah,
And
I
in
think
that
it was
time frame,
$700.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's
Instro-
phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, I love
There
that.
you
It's
go.
phenomenal.
So that's
Look, I didn't. I just want to be clear. I don't judge anybody who wants to buy the WMD wave folder. I'm just curious whether the market actually does demand stuff that's that expensive and so specific. I mean, we'll see. I guess.
Right. That's one of the reasons to do a pre-order, though, so he can doesn't have to estimate demand, right? He can just do the pre-orders and.
Yeah. And as a group, I think we could be making an assumption, right? There's a lot of artistry that goes into designing these modules. I've been lucky enough to witness it with you, Blue Nautilus, and the attention you pay not just to the sounds, but to the panel design and everything. I think that maybe William wanted to create this and didn't know if there was a market. A lot of people are creating things for themselves as artists and musicians, and this could fall into that subset. But I mean, obviously, if you're deep into sound design and if you're looking to make raw, edgy, unique synthesis, then this is an incredible tool in your sound design toolbox.
The late great Paul from SynthTech, synthesis technology, who recently passed away, once put all of his finances right out there on Facebook just to show that he doesn't do this for the money, that he does it for the love of creating these instruments, and I thought that was a really wonderful opening of the books. Yeah.
I've heard that from quite a few people I spoke with, and to your point, Oski Jiggy, it's like these are not big companies with marketing departments and user focus groups and stuff like this. This is somebody who just kind of went, you know what, I want to build one of these, so I'm just going to start building it, and off they go. And we forget that even the largest of Eurorack companies is probably what make noise, maybe 15, 20 people, Intellijel, that kind of thing. They're not big companies. And so they really do a lot of this for the love of the music or of the gear or of the technology. And what I found is quite amazing. You chat with them, and I would chat with Bafak, and I said, oh, I really love this, and I love how I can do that. And they're all standing there with big smiles on their faces because they just love hearing from people how we are using the thing that they put all this time into. And that's when I talk about the people and you're talking to the makers, you're not going up to a trade show and talking to a rep. You're talking to the person who labored over their kitchen table for hours at night making this. And when you say to them, I love when I do this with it, their whole years of work suddenly is worth the effort to them. More than the money, more than that to me is the magic of Superbooth and of the whole hobby indeed itself.
Yeah, you're certainly not getting into modular manufacturing to get rich. That's can't be your main goal.
Wait, what?
Oh man, I've got to rethink this whole manufacturing
Blue Nautilus,
thing.
I didn't mean you, of course.
Okay, yeah. But honestly, I think SynthDad said it really, really well, because there is very, very little money to be made. But the thing that keeps me going as someone who has put way too much time than I probably should have into making one of these modules is just, when I made the VCV rack modules, seeing them show up in people's little videos where they were making music with them. I mean, that was just
it's got to be hugely gratifying.
It's so gratifying that it's totally the reason for doing it.
One last quick note on that. One person and company that sticks out a lot when it comes to just building things for fun is, I think, of Eli from Mystic Circuits. And he makes, he's got his purple aesthetic. His panels are gorgeous. He makes some unique hardware, and I think he's kind of like a perfect example of someone who makes what they want to see exist, and then if people buy it, they buy it.
It's the same with Paul from Error Instruments. The stuff is bonkers. Like, it's completely nuts. But, somebody out there is buying it and he's enjoying making it for them. So it's there for them, all right. Yeah.
I could, if you want, we could circle back. So I still was laughing about the beefing out, because when I think of beefing out, I'm actually kind of imagining about all the, I think of that giant MIDI controller you've got on your desk right now, SynthDad. That's
the Mango.
That Mango is massive. So that's a Eurorack company that has now expanded into a pretty chunky controller. And then you've got the Neuzeit Drop, you've got the Bento, you've got the Uranographs. Erica Synths has done the Hex Drum. That's out of the box. The Jellymix, new launch control, new polyend mesh, Vermona drum ding. So just tons of stuff from modular. I guess Vermona isn't technically straight.
Drum ding has a really interesting workflow. The top of it is basically a drum synth, and then you create a sound and then you sample it into one of the 16 banks. So you create each sound, and then just an interesting workflow.
I've got a Superbooth question for you, SynthDad. So modules aside, which is a funny thing to say in a Eurorack podcast, modules aside, any great moments, any great performances, any nice surprises, what stands out? What are you going to remember beside the modules from this year?
Great question.
I love watching people perform, like the Tune Girl. I watched Maiden perform. I went to not Tresor, what's it, Ohm, which was right beside Tresor, a club there for the opening night party. Went to Berghain for the Superbooth special, and I saw Heimbach perform. And I've seen Heimbach so many times on video, but to see him perform his tape loop style with industrial test equipment live in a club with hundreds of people was just amazing. It was just like that was all I wanted to see. And Sinead Certain Girl came up next, and then there was Or Rose was after. I was like, oh my god, can this night get any better? Like, that was just one of those kind of things that you only get in a situation with live performances. And what's funny is, of course, at Superbooth, there's as many people standing behind the booth looking at the gear and commenting on what they're doing and how they're doing it, as there are people in front just enjoying the vibe and dancing. And the nice thing is the performers are all delighted to chat with you afterwards and talk about their process and their technique. And, you know, we were talking a little bit about live performing just before we came on air. To me, that's just this really exciting area I'd like to get more into. So I love watching how somebody can take what to me would look like a very small system and make an hour-long or whatever performance out of it. And I you know, that just shows that it's not about the modules. It's about your approach, your technique, your inventiveness, your cleverness in combining them, and then just having the confidence to get up there and just throw it all out and just throw a party and invite everybody along. So I always enjoy that bit too, and it's one of the things that makes, I think, Superbooth nice, is that like you're actually seeing people use all this stuff to produce live music and make people get up and dance, or make people just really enjoy the music.
Wait, you use this stuff?
Apparently there are some people who make music with this gear. I've never heard of such a thing.
That's incredible. Can you introduce me to some of them?
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about that sometime.
Track these people down.
Did Heinbach use Collide 4 in his live performance?
I don't know, but I would be surprised if he didn't. He had two very large signal generators stacked on top of each other. He had pieces of tape, which he was running from a tape machine across the stage, looped around people and bits of equipment on the stage.
Of course he did.
It was just, it was just a performance.
Of course.
Someone
needs to just do his, "Hi, I'm Heinbach," and just tape degrade that.
He
Did
did.
he tape degrade? Oh
no, he didn't. He didn't do that, but he did say that at the start, and the whole club was just cheering. We're all waiting for him to say it. Yeah.
20 minutes of him slowly tape degrading his intro. That'd be some like go to sleep type stuff.
Yeah, so to me, that outside of the modules, that was the kind of stuff I really enjoyed. And then it was just chatting with everybody, seeing how everybody's doing, you know, catching up with all the YouTube people I know, but also, you know, meeting new people who, you know, are just, this is their first time at Superbooth, and they're just amazed, and you're asking them what you think of it, and how, you know, what are you walking away excited about, and that's always just so much fun, you know, because it's rare, certainly at home, you know, if I'm standing around talking about LFOs and VCAs and wave folders for 10 hours a day, my family's probably going to tell me, okay, Dad, that's enough of that. Can we get back to real life now? What's going wrong? But you can do that for 3 days straight in Berlin at Superbooth, and you will fit right in. And that's the best part of it all.
No one looks at you like you're crazy.
It's a bit like, you know, I don't know, Stu, you've gone to Burning Man many times. Everyone just adopts this, that maybe their true self comes out. You can go to Superbooth and let your true self come out, you know, and won't be judged.
It's kind of true. It's kind of true, and you're really never going to be able to see everything that everyone else saw. You'll have your own unique experience.
You'll have your own
kind of
unique
wonderful
experience.
Yeah.
Let your synth freak flag fly, so to speak.
Speaking of, I think this is somewhat fresh off the press, but KnobCon's coming up in early September, and I know we'll all be talking more about that as it approaches. But apparently, if anyone's learned some lessons from previous years, you can book the hotel at the discount now. It's the hotel. You go to the KnobCon website, and
it's the Hyatt Schaumburg.
Exactly. If you're even thinking of going
the
to
scenic hills of Schaumburg.
Yeah,
that's right.
Is that what we're talking about?
You should reserve your hotel sooner than later. It is if it's like previous years, should be refundable until whatever 24, 48 hours before. But not a bad idea to reserve your rooms now, folks.
That is great advice, especially since everyone's going to want to see the Seaside Modular table.
Oh yes,
God,
Proteus.
Yeah.
I heard that's the main driver.
Is this the big reveal? Is this the night? Is this the time? Is this when it happens?
No, but just making a guess about the future. We hope to see everybody out in the scenic hills of Schaumburg.
Yeah.
But guys, this has been great. SynthDads, thanks so much for leading us through the experience of Superbooth. I really feel like I went there vicariously through you to some degree. And everyone else who, if you enjoyed this episode, we've got plenty more where this came from. We're going to have some guests in the future. We got some great ideas for episodes. If you did enjoy this podcast at all, of course, go ahead and subscribe so that you can be sure to catch all of the future episodes that are coming. You can find us on Instagram. We are at Rack Pack Podcast. Is that right, guys? I think I got that right.
Sounds right. Sounds right enough.
I hope you got it
close
right,
enough.
because otherwise you just sent people.
There's
not,
going
it should be.
There's going to be a podcast about car racks that's going to get a whole influx of synthesizer listeners.
who will
all
be
four of our
terribly
listeners.
Confused. Yes. Both of them.
But thanks for joining us, and thanks to the rest of the Rack Pack, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome.
See you, everyone.
Talk to you soon.
Next time.